Yes, so with that, we should move to our last segment, real or fake.
Okay. All
Um,
right. Well, real or fake hoops? The IST was a story of the season.
the IST, I am going to say it was real, even
Okay.
though none of us remember it. And we remember the Lakers won, and we like to troll them for that. But I think when it was going on, people liked it. I think people were skeptical, and I mean, a lot of fans were not about it at first. But it was fun for what it was. I just think it was way too early, and it was kind of forcing it upon us, and we didn't really know what these teams were, so it was kind of hard to even be excited for some of the matchups because it's like the Pacers and the Lakers didn't live up to them being in that final by this time
Yeah.
that this season's now ending. And so it's like a lot of the storylines and the dramas being taken out because it's so early on. I wish they could push it back a little bit, but I understand why they have it there. So I'm going to go with real, but I think they can improve it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think you're right that we troll about the IST because the Lakers won it. But we were all really into those games when they were happening. They were all really good games. They were competitive, except when the Nuggets got blown out by the Rockets in their last group play game. That was really
Yeah.
sad. um,
No.
but for the most part, those games were really competitive, and it seemed like the players were taking them seriously. So I'll be interested to see how that goes next year.
Same. All right, next on our list, real or fake, the officiating and also the offensive explosion that we've been seeing.
I think the officiating was the story of the season, but I didn't think it was a story of the season until the everyone noticed that like the game got more physical post All-Star break. I only say that because people were complaining about the whistle during this like the beginning of the season, kind of until All-Star when offense was like out of control and all of this. But I really think that that's just a story every single year. So I don't think it was a story of the season, but it did become one once these new like points of emphasis or whatever came out in the shadows and like the NBA was denying it, but then they were like, no, but we kind of did, but not really. And then like this week, Silver was like, yes, like of course, like we had some different interpretations or whatever. So I do think that it was not a story until it actually was in the last month and a half.
Yeah. I mean, I always come at officiating from the perspective of Jokic and how he should be getting
That his
more free
whistle is.
throws. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm one who would say he could get an and one on so many more of his attempts, but I know
Okay,
they already
well,
did.
real or fake, Wemby is in fact an alien
I don't know if I'm supposed to take this literally as in he is an alien
from outer space.
or if it's just like
I
he
know he is
is
from another country, but that's not what I
we've
mean.
we've now moved on from like the unicorn description, like 'cause
I
it's been
know.
overused, to now alien. But it's cool that he's embracing it. I mean,
Yeah.
Wemby's definitely going to be real. I wanted him to be a bust and to not succeed. No offense,
Because he's in
Wemby.
the Western Conference.
Yeah, it's just competition. Like he's awesome. He's going to be cool to watch, but it's definitely scary. It's been fun to watch Jokic and him in their matchups. I don't know if we're going to get another one. But if Wemby plays, cool. I don't know. Maybe Jokic won't play that game. I have no idea. Yeah, what do you got for Wemby?
I think Wemby like far exceeded any expectation I could have had from him. After I like got really into following the NBA in the off season, I was like so starved of content that I watched Summer League, like so much Summer League, and he definitely struggled in his first couple of games, like just adjusting to the speed and the physicality. But even in like his first game where he was really bad offensively, the defensive upside was so apparent that I immediately had to take back my like hint of like maybe he is a bust, whatever, because uh like people were just driving away from him when they were directly under the basket. And it's not like his block timing was like great or anything. Like he does have good defensive instincts, but he's not like, say Rudy level, or even like Chet, who has been his direct competition in this Rookie of the Year race this season. But I think that defensively, I knew from the beginning of the season that it would be there. But offensively, ever since they moved him to the 5 and had Zach Collins coming off the bench, and they had Wemby having one more space to operate, and two because Zach Collins moved to the bench, they started Trey Jones at point guard. So he had a point guard that wasn't Jeremy Sohan feeding him the ball. And he started taking and making his pull-up threes at a very high rate. So offense could be run through him. And he's like a good passer. He's like a really good passer sometimes. You don't want him dribbling because he's still just like, he's just, you don't want large guys dribbling, even if they're good dribblers. Like, I don't want Yoke dribbling most of the time, even though he's probably like the best big man ball handler in the league. So same with Wemby, but he can. And so I'm going to just tell people, like, stop trying to improve the Spurs, because if they get like 2 more good players around him, like decent players, like, it is over for us, because he's only going to get better from here. Like, his trajectory over the course of the season has been crazy. I watched like one of the first games of the season was like those back-to-back or double headers, whatever, against the Suns, where he ate their souls from down 20. And then another one where like the Spurs went up 20 and the Suns came back. And then Wemby was like, no, I'm just in takeover mode now, and you guys have nothing for me. They had nothing for him. Not that they have anything for anybody, in my opinion. But
they even lost to them without Wemby.
Yes, they lost to the Wemby-less Spurs, which spurred a, no pun intended, a Tim Legler diatribe about how he wants to stop talking about the Suns, but then they won a couple games and made people talk about them again.
Which brings us to, is the West really the best?
Okay, well, this is so real. This is the realest hoops story of the season, whatever, is that the Western Conference is absolutely, on aggregate, at like every level, better than the Eastern Conference. Just listen to some of these stats. So I was looking at this stuff on April 4th. That's as of a week ago. The bottom, so let's look at like the worst teams. The bottom 4 teams in the West have a negative point differential when they play against Eastern Conference teams. The East has 9 teams that have a negative point differential against the Western Conference, which means there are teams that are going to make the playoffs that don't score more than the Western Conference when they play the Western Conference. All right, great.
And there's more.
So there's so much more, because when you look at let's look at the top. So Boston's obviously great. New York has been consistent. And actually the Cavs they are the 3 teams in the East that have a point differential greater than 1 against the West. So not like, point whatever, when you look at how they score versus how they defend. Whereas the Western Conference has 9 teams with a point differential greater than 1 when they play the Eastern Conference. So that's going to be every team in the top 10 besides the Lakers, because for some reason the Lakers just dropped teams against, like, the Eastern Conference games were like the ones that if you're in the West, you needed to be winning just to like climb in the standings in the West. Yeah. And so that's why the Lakers are where they are.
Right. I know last season, everyone was saying the East was better than the West because the top teams were really good. Thankfully, I feel like the consensus has pretty much agreed that the East
were they though? Because they got drubbed by the Miami Heat.
No, I still held the position that the West was better last season, but it was just less clear to most of the NBA fans. This time around, people are coming around to the idea of the East, and obviously, I don't think anyone can deny it with how bad the bottom is, and I think that's where a lot of people will definitely concede that the East is not as good, but I still think obviously this season at the top, excluding the Celtics, despite some East teams impressing us, it's still not been pretty.
Yeah, no, I think that the Celtics are doing a real carry job with the East record against the West right now, because it's really bleak when you look below that. So the last thing that I wanted to mention with this East West thing was just it has to do with how we're evaluating the teams in the West. So 6 out of the top 7 of our teams out west have winning records against above 500 teams. So winning records against teams with winning records. So that's hard to do, right? You want to get as close to 500 as you can if you want to be like a good team, right? The exception, at least again as of April 4th, was Dallas, who was 22 and 26. I think they're probably going to move up since they have basically only won games since I was looking at these stats. And then Sacramento, when I looked at this, was only 1 game below 500 against teams with winning records.
Yeah.
In the East, you only have 3 teams that have winning records against teams below 500. I don't even think that's a bad thing, because like I said, in most years, you just want to try to get to even against teams with winning records, beat up on the bad teams, win like half your games against teams that are ideally like in your tier, and you can consider yourself a good team. But the West is like stacked because we have so many teams that can beat good teams like consistently, that it becomes this like, it's one of the reasons I think the Pacific Division, which is all like, Pacific Division has a high floor because it's all those like high star power teams, the Warriors, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Suns, and then you could say Sacramento as well with Fox and Domas. They've just been like cannibalizing each other, so you never expect them to like go on a long run of losing games, except I guess the Warriors definitely did that at different points in this season. But they have to play each other 4 times each, so it's just like this weird like fishbowl, and somehow the Clippers were able to climb out of that mud. And so like the last question I wanted to ask you was just like, are the 9 and 10 seeds out west actually decent teams?
I want to say no, because the Warriors are in there. But
yeah, I don't think they are. I agree with you. The Warriors are not, for separate reasons.
I mean, we could talk about what decent means and like what kind of level they have to reach.
Well, it's like if we didn't have conferences,
yeah,
the Warriors and Lakers would be in the playoffs, or at least like, I'm pretty sure they would be, because the Bulls and Hawks definitely would not be in the postseason picture.
They're definitely better than those seeds out in the East, but in the West, like the problem with the Lakers and the Warriors is just they're inconsistent. I mean, the Lakers have been playing good lately. They have had injuries, so I know people will point to that. But it's just weird because AD is playing really well. LeBron's playing really well. D'Lo is playing well on offense. And it's just like still they're just like dropping games to not that great teams. Like they play good teams well, at least, but they're just not getting the consistent effort, I think, to be out of this position. And it's unfortunate that they're going to now have to struggle out of the 9-10 play-in position unless something happens.
Unless they just don't.
Yeah.
They're going to have to, or they just won't.
Yeah, or they just won't. I wouldn't mind if they do. I don't want to play the Lakers again in the first round as a Nuggets fan, just because it's, there's so much.
It's played out.
There's so much history. But it would be theoretically an easy series. We're going to talk about that concept in the next episode about what makes an easy series and looking at the Nuggets first round. But the Lakers, they definitely have tools, but it's just they don't have enough on their backcourt. They're just too small. Like they just can't compete with a lot of these rosters, and there's just holes. It's just the reality of their team. So, yeah, the Warriors though, they're just clinging to the past. They should have traded Clay at the deadline. I was saying they need to trade. They need to do something. They didn't. So here they are. Although they beat the Lakers recently, so maybe they'll make a little run in the play-in and get the 8 seed. I don't know. I doubt it, but we will see.
I mean, I will say, I do think that the Lakers are a decent team, and they definitely I don't think that we even talked about the Lakers as in our performance review.
Oh
They're a
yeah,
hard team to evaluate, but for me, it was more like they had one really consequentially bad stretch immediately after the IST.
yeah, that was
Um,
rough.
and then everything after that, like they've been pretty good. But it's just not enough to move up in this West. Like that's the thing is after having such a consequentially bad stretch, you just removed all margin for error. So like little games that you dropped here and there, like yeah, the Nuggets like dropped one game to the Jazz earlier, but we also never went on a stretch where we went like 3-10. And it just wouldn't happen because we have that. I think we have that upper ceiling where we have some margin for error just because of talent. Um,
Yeah,
that the Lakers, I don't think they have that. And you could say the same thing for the Warriors, but they had a lot more of these like close losses. That's the big difference I think between the Lakers and Warriors is that the Lakers are able to execute in the clutch. They're a much better clutch team than the Warriors have been. And so the Warriors have lost a lot of these like toss up games, a lot more of these toss up games that ended up putting them now only a few games back of the 6th seed when you think about how many times
yeah,
they lost like a coin flip game against like mid teams, against good teams, against great teams, then like that's the difference between the two where I would say I think the Lakers are actually a decent team, but the Warriors have had some like red flags when it comes to execution in different phases of the game that make me think that this is kind of unfortunately, in my opinion, it's unfortunate because I like their play style and I think that they just make watching basketball more fun when they're like at least a decent team
yeah.
in terms of like they add to the NBA landscape, right?
Right.
I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, the NBA is helped when like the Knicks are good or whatever.
Oh,
It's
right,
not that.
right.
It's more like that the Warriors add a certain texture to the landscape of the NBA that is, I think, good for the sport. So when they're bad, it's just kind of sad. I don't know. I'm sad.
Yes. Unless you're me, who is waiting
Yeah.
for Steph to retire, because I'm tired of watching him hit threes.